All right. Habari za Sabui, Habari za Mchana, Habari za Gioni. Brothers and sisters all over the world. Kakas and dadas and kakas. All over the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, brothers and sisters all over the world. The name of this channel is The African Times, and I'm Thomas. All right, welcome to another broadcast of the Night Chat. The Night Chat. This is going to be a very interesting night chat and a very enjoyable night chat for me. I'm going to talk a little bit about something I've been uh, kind of expressing for a while now, and I'm excited and delighted to actually hear that it's taking place. I talked to you guys about economics, and I've talked to you about uh, consciousness, about the awareness of the need for certain things to take place in our lives to be able to protect us, to be able to uh, develop uh, our own consciousness, our own people who have our ideas and values. In other words, be a self generating, self creating people. And a great uh, part of that being possible is having uh, the use of certain technology. All right, so let's dig into it so you can understand it. And so I talked to you that the education is important. The education of our people is important because um, when you talk about education, education is not just to get a job. Education is for the purpose of protecting the society in which you live, in which you are a part. And you know, in order to be able to provide the type of education you need uh, to build the kind of society you need to have a good economic system in place, a good economic foundation. And it's kind of like a revolving circle. In order to have a good economic foundation, you're going to have other institutions in place to protect that economic foundation, to ensure that that economic foundation is solid and secure. And in doing that, uh, it will allow you the good health of the economic situation will allow you to have other institutions, those very institutions that are in place to protect the economic foundation. So let me be a little bit more clear so that you understand. You have to educate your people in order to provide the institutions, to develop the institutions to educate your people. You have to have a good economic foundation. Why? Because you got to build the schools, right? You have to build the roads to the schools. You have to have buses to transport people to and from the schools. Then you have to have the staffing of the schools, which means those people have to be educated. You have to have the books that are part of your curriculum, which means those things have to be produced and manufactured and they have to be distributed widely. Well, all of those actions are economic activities. So, in order for you to have economic activity take place, you have to have educated people who understand how economics work, and then how to combine your resources, your economic resources, your educational resources, so that they reinforce one another and then allow you to be able to produce both. Okay? But now, the other component that I talked to you about is you have to have uh, the protection of that economic foundation. Because there are people out here among us who uh, don't look like me and you, and they don't want to see an economic foundation developed with people like me and you. So um, this is why you have to protect your economic foundation, which means you need another institution. And that institution is one that um, uh, generally is called a military. There's no other way to get around it. Now, in order to have a military, just like you had to build the school, you had to have the resources necessary to build the school, the roads, the building, the books, the pencils, all of those things. With the military, you have to have the same thing. You have to have a strong economic foundation to support a military. Not only the personnel in the military, but also the various weaponry associated with the military, so that the military can perform well if it's put in a position where it has to act. And that means a manufacturing base. And all of these things, again, are economic activity. So your economic foundation has to be strong, has to be strong. And I want to remind everybody, what I'm talking about is not something new to people that look like me and you. No, not at all. To the contrary, uh, in time in the past, ancient time is one way to look at it. I was trying to think of the other word that they call it. Where they refer to the history before European domination. But it's still all history. It's the history of people. Well, back in many years ago, we'll just say it that way, thousands of years ago, we as a people that look like me and you, had a strong economic foundation. And as a result of that economic foundation, we had those institutions I just described, educational institutions, military institutions, which were in place to protect the society, to educate the society, so that the society can prosper. And so the economic foundation was there then, and that's how we were able to be the dominant group in the societies of the world at that time. Okay, well, now we all know that the dominant group, the dominant society, are, are comprised of people who don't look like you and me. All right. So I started out this video telling you that I'm very excited because things are happening uh, in the society of people that look like you and me that give us the ability to um, provide the economic foundation we need, to provide the educational institutions we need to bring about the type of consciousness that our people need, our young children, so that when they become adults, they are not just people that look like you and me, but have the minds of people who don't look like you and me. All right? And that's very important, because if you have the wrong mind, you'll help in your own domination because you're thinking like them. And you shouldn't be doing that. So remember, I told you at the beginning, we're going to talk about something that makes me very happy, and that is Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, supposedly this year, 2022, and we're fastly approaching the end of 2022, so I'm going to have to look into it and see if they were successful. But Zimbabwe has announced to the world that they're going to launch their first satellite into space. You understand what I'm saying? Did you hear me? Zimbabwe is going to launch their first satellite into space. This is extremely important, and it's an extremely good thing. Remember, I've talked to you many times, you have to have it in your consciousness. Now, you have to have it in your consciousness to think about a thing, to know that you need a thing. You got to have it there. You got to have it in your mind. If you're not thinking about the need for a satellite, then you won't strive to get a satellite. So in this case, clearly someone there has been thinking about the need for a satellite. Now, why is a satellite important? Well, there are many reasons, but we're going to go back to economic. Okay, I'll give you just a small example. If you put a satellite in space, a satellite can perform many functions. One of which is maybe you can have a satellite in space and it provides the ability for you to send signals to the members of your society for television or internet or those types of things, social media, so that you can communicate to your people. You can put out television shows, radio programs, information, whatever you need, so that you what? Educate the people in the way that you need them to be educated, so that they understand and become knowledgeable and conditioned and trained to function as a society in a way that protects the society, protects the society's values. You can put out all the kind of information you need so that you program the people to be the kind of people you need them to be to help themselves. You can do that with a satellite. Now, the other thing um, uh, is that the very fact that you now, and by the way, before I go here, let me ask you something. Did any of you know that Zimbabwe was launching a satellite into space? Did you know? Put it in the comments. Let me know if you know, because I didn't know. It's something I talked about a while ago. It's very important, particularly when you understand the things the satellite does and it's capable of doing, like what I just mentioned to you, being able to provide signals. Now, again, that's education. It's economic. Zimbabwe had to be economically in a position to be able to generate the funding, the revenue needed to launch a satellite. Either getting the technology, manufacturing the satellite themselves. If they don't manufacture it, having the financial wherewithal to bring those people into the country who can provide the technical know-how to launch the satellite. You need to have that your finances in place. So economically, they must have been in that position to do that. Uh, Now, the other thing is that they were aware that they needed it. Now, if when I ask you, did you know they did that, and your answer was no, then think about how many people didn't know. How many people that look like me and you don't know that? We leave all of that type of activity, uh, the thought about uh, that capability and that technical know-how, we associate that with only people who don't look like me and you. And so then generations and generations of children, they'll grow up thinking that um, having that aspiration to be able to do that, it won't be present. And then even if they did think about it, they'll associate it with people who don't look like us. So they'll think the only way to do it is to get with those people, or those people are capable of doing it and we'll never do it. No, that's the consciousness part I'm talking about. That you must have it in your consciousness. So we, as people, uh, are supposed to take Zimbabwe's information about launching a satellite and spread that all over the world, to every crack and crevice of the world where our people are, explaining to them that we as a people are doing this, so that now our children will know, wow, space. We're dealing in space technology. Wow, maybe I might want to do that. I might want to be an engineer. in that field. I might want to be an astronaut in that field. I may want to be a scientist in that field. That now, here's where I told you they work in combination. You put out that kind of propaganda, that kind of information, now it's in their consciousness. The next component is the education of that person to understand that if they have that aspiration, if they have that aptitude, if they have that talent, that skill to work in that field, that talent and that aspiration and that ingenuity must be brought back to people who look like me and you. Not to take that and go take that over to them, share it with them, people who don't look like me and you, share it with them, and then their technological uh, aspects of their society continue to develop and advance, and yours, people that look like me and you, ours, it doesn't advance because we've taken our best minds, sent it over there. Now that, to be able to encourage our people to do that, that's education. That's where they kind of, like I told you, become kind of intermingled, intertwined. You have the technology. Now, are you putting out the propaganda necessary to create the human being that you need to create so that that human being understands their commitment to their society? This is what has to happen. So I'm telling you now, I'm doing my part, spreading the word. If you did not know that Zimbabwe has done that, or that they're going to do it, it's supposed that the article said they'll do it in 2022. I'll follow up. But again, the point is that what are we talking about? We're talking about placing a satellite in space, whether that's this year or maybe they ran behind, they're going to do it next year, or what have you. The point is, it is now in the consciousness and the minds of the people. And that's very important because to tie it together, the satellite can now provide the technological ability to educate our people in such a way that our people now become enculturated with the belief that they must work together, unity. They must strive for technological advancements in space. And when they get that technological know-how, they have to keep that with our people. Okay? That's how they work together. Now, I'm very excited again because what I'm happy about is to discover that Zimbabwe is doing this. I believe there's another one. I'm going to look it up. I think it's Uganda. And if it is, we're gonna talk about it. I'm going to share it with you. I just got to look it up. And so now the other thing is, remember I told you economic. You have to have the economic structure in place so that you can bring these kind of things to fruition. The satellite and whatnot. But you also what? Have to protect it. Those of you from America, you know, if you know your history, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Tulsa, 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 Oklahoma, I believe it was. Even Black Wall Street is what they call it. That was an economic foundation being developed among what? People that look like me and you, but in a hostile environment. America, you know, leaders of the free world, leaders of democracy and humanity. So they bombed it. They bombed it, set it on fire, burned it up, got rid of it all. Economic foundation. That economic foundation, had it been left to develop and nurture itself and the people benefit from it, it would have grown. And growing economically means that if they knew how to grow economically, then the next logical step would be to develop the means necessary to protect it. Now, they did it backwards. They developed it first. They didn't have the means to protect it. Maybe they thought they didn't need it. But certainly anyone who's grown up in the United States over the last 100 years knows that people that look like me and you need protection. And the very fact that it's a part of their history that they bombed it They bombed it and burned all the buildings down, and people's homes and people's businesses. They burned them down because they saw them developing economically. All right, so this is what makes me excited about Zimbabwe, because Zimbabwe understands whoever those people are, even if they're partnering with other people, and they may be. I'll tell you a little bit about why that's not necessarily a bad thing. They understand they needed that technology because they needed to be able to educate their people, put it in their people's minds and consciousness that you got to be looking at this. You have to think scientifically and what the things we're going to need. Their economic foundation, even with the sanctions, and they're being sanctioned by the U.S., even with the sanctions, the economic foundation is strong enough so that they're able to place resources in that area to develop that area of technology. Now, I told you, the satellites can give you television, it can give you other things, and um, so that you can run your propaganda. But there's also a very important part about satellites in space uh, that, and nobody's going to talk about it. They're not going to tell you because they don't want black people, people that look like me and you. They don't want this to even come into our minds. Remember the consciousness, placing it in the minds of the people. In other words, if you let somebody else have a satellite, and those people, people who don't look like you are the only people with a satellite can beam the social media signals to you through your television, your internet, your radio, whatever, then they're controlling what is feeding the minds of your people. And they'll feed your people nothing but harmful information so that your people can never solve their own problems. The other part, and it's the part I'm telling you people aren't going to tell you, you have to protect your economic foundation, which means you have to have the various means, one of which is a military. Yeah, you have to have a military. You have to. In this world we live in, everybody has one. We have to have one, and we do. Now you have to have the technological apparatus so that your military can fight in the modern world. And satellites, even if that's not what the professed intentions are in the beginning, the satellites provide you with that, the beginning of that technology. If it's in your consciousness to develop the satellite in such a way that it provides you that kind of protection, military protection. You know, if you're going to have a military missile guidance system, I'd imagine you're going to have it be able to communicate with a satellite. Now, I'm speaking generally. I'm not a scientific engineer, but I'm absolutely certain if you're going to be able to look down at someone from miles in the earth, up in the earth's orbit, look down at somebody else to watch them to see what they're doing, that's what's being done to us. So we should be doing it too. You're going to need a satellite. So again, I'm very excited that Zimbabwe is taking these steps. They're necessary steps, both to provide education, number one, but also the beginnings, if used properly, to provide the kind of protection we need to protect our economy from those who seek to harm it. People that look like me and you are entitled to protection, education, economic freedom and liberation. There's no way to get around it. So, just thought I'd come and share with you just so that you guys know. Kudos. Thank you, good people of Zimbabwe, for having the courage to pursue scientific and technological development that will only serve to help us protect ourselves from those people who seek to do us harm. Okay? Now, something I don't know, I haven't dug in that deep, but it doesn't really matter. It's just it's basic. If there is a group aiding in the development of launching the satellite or putting it in space or building it or manufacturing it, every scientist in Zimbabwe, every engineer, every inventor, anybody that has a interest, a stakeholder, a part in building it and putting it up into space or whatever, you need to be making detailed notes and organizing yourself so that you see how it's done, so that in the relatively near future, you're doing it on your own without the aid of others. Now, this is what many countries do. China is one of them. You take it apart. I'm not saying they do this, but I'm sure they have. Their scientists. There's new technology. You examine it. You look at it. You figure out how it's done, and then you duplicate it. Figure out how it's done, and then you make your updates, your advances to it. You make it fit what you need. And so I'm sure, I'm hopeful that our good brothers in Zimbabwe are thinking in those terms. So, all right, just wanted to give you the update, some African news, some wonderful, wonderful African news that I don't think is going to be all over the mainstream media. And even our good brothers and sisters, I don't know, I haven't seen any of them announce it, but it's fairly new. I think the article I saw said they started this in 2021. I think maybe they announced it. And when I say started it, I don't mean they started the development of it, because it probably takes some time to do that. But I think this article said they announced in 2021 that they're going to launch in 2022. So we'll follow up and see if they actually did it. All right? Okay, everybody. Hey, thanks for your time. I appreciate you. Remember, good news, good African news. People that look like me and you. Zimbabwe is about to launch its satellite. I think it's called the ZimSat. ZimSat 1, I think. In space. We're getting there. And we won't be stopped. It's going to happen. All right, everybody. Uhuru. Uhuru. Uhuru.